right, folks. We are almost on time, which for those of you who know me know that I am French, and typically us and logistics do not stereotypically get along. So I'm really trying my best to hold the trains on schedule here. For our next talk, we're bringing together a bunch of the different pieces of the stablecoin stack. And you may ask yourself, what is a stablecoin stack? And that's a great question. To us, it means things like wallets. It means things like KYC and compliance software. It means things like accounting and reconciliation systems. And it means things like payment rails, liquidity, conversion between fiat and stablecoins, all those different pieces. So I'm really excited to welcome up on stage Jared from Fireblocks to talk about institutional wallets, Adam from Dynamic to talk about consumer wallets, Deepankar from Socure to talk about compliance, KYC, KYB, Victor from Perez to talk about accounting, reconciliations, all those very fun and exciting topics, and Brie from Borderless to talk about rails, liquidity, and local currencies, and then Chris from Dynamic to moderate.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the next panel. So I think so far we've had a really insightful discourse about a lot of the who and the what, and even like the why behind stables. And I think for this panel, we're going to focus a little bit more on the how. So like how can companies think about migrating to stablecoin rails and some of the best practices as it relates to like wallets, compliance, accounting, and overall rails. So my name is Chris from Dynamic. I'm going to just let the panelists go here and introduce themselves.
Cool. So my name is Brie, but it's actually Brissia, and I'm the head of sales at Borderless. And for those of you that don't know what Borderless is, we're an organization network that essentially connects stablecoins to fiat so that we can actually help people make use of stablecoins and essentially helping companies be able to get access to these without having to implement one provider at a time. It can be costly. So that's what I do.
How's it going? I am the director of sales at Trace Finance. My name is Victor Cerio, and essentially what we are is a treasury management system for crypto. So you probably have a bunch of custodians, a lot of different exchanges, self-custody wallets are on many different blockchains, and aggregating all of this data to even just simply get balances is very complex. And that's what we specialize in, being able to get all of your positions from DeFi to staking rewards, any movement on stable coins, be able to do subsystem reconciliation, all that kind of complex nitty-gritty CFO stuff. That's us.
Hey everybody, my name is Deepankar. I lead product at Socure. Socure is an identity verification and fraud prevention platform. We help prevent fraud, AML, KYC. I myself have been in payment space and identity space for almost 10 years now. I'm from New York, and looking at the room, looks like San Francisco is not a West kind of place. People love blazers and stuff here, so pretty nice to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Zion, head of product at Dynamic. If you're unfamiliar with Dynamic, you can think about us as a wallet SDK or an SDK for any wallet interaction. So if you're thinking about building on stablecoins, whether you're building a great app use case in South America, or whether you're building a B2B app or contractor payments, generally speaking, things start with a wallet. So you need to be able to make that experience really robust, make it less frictionful and really easy to use. So you come to Dynamic and build on top of us.
Hey guys, Jared from Fireblocks. I'm one of the sales directors leading payments in fintech. And before this, I was at Currency Cloud. So I've been waiting for this day for a while and just excited to be here.
Awesome. So I think based on the last panel, we've been hearing that stablecoin adoption has been growing a lot globally. But as a fintech business, right, where should they even begin in terms of like getting into the rails to begin with? Maybe starting off with, you guys down there.
I think the first question, if I'm looking to enter into the space, is how are you thinking about custody? And really that comes down to control. So we're seeing like a wave of traditional players and incumbents looking to enter the space. And a lot of times you get questions like, where are these funds held? Are they held with a bank? Are they held with you, Fireblocks? And I think like that's the first thing, is understanding custody, and do you want control over these accounts, or do you want another provider who's going to take on the licensing aspect of it? But then from there, there's all these other pieces of the stack of how do you map your existing processes onto blockchains. So how do you plug into like compliance and AML and screening to reconciliation and accounting and all these other pieces. But yeah.
Yeah, so I would actually echo something similar. So actually, I think about it a little bit differently, though. I actually first ask yourself, like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to meet demand for something in Latin America? Do you have a lot of businesses that you're trying to pay? Are you trying to build a contractor network? What are you first looking to do? And then asking yourself similarly to how do you want to hold this? Do you want to retain all the access to coins, to assets? Or do you want to be able to enable it such that developers or users or businesses will be able to hold them themselves and then be able to interoperate with them, right? So how do you want to set up? Then you will probably ask yourself, what more can I do, right? Will I be able to connect these application experiences or vendors to be able to pay to their contractors? What are they using? Are they going to be paying out in other wallets? Are they going to want to connect to exchanges? So I like to first start with what do you want to do? What area? And then start with where do I want to hold it? And what do my users then want to do next?
Thank you. So yes and yes. But additionally, I think one of the things that I feel when I'm talking to customers is that I feel like we're all so often very used to talking to people that are in this room. And, we use a lot of words like the wallets and the blockchain and the on-chain and all of that. And ideally, yes, this is a lot of our market right now. And these are a lot of the customers that I'm talking to. But at the end of the day, the vast majority of the volume that's going to be moved is going to be people that are not feeling so included in the conversation. And so I also feel like we also need to find a way that we adapt the way that we are talking about stablecoins, the way that we're talking about how the network works and how the technology works so that people can just feel more included in the conversation. They don't shy away from it and they don't feel like it's overly complicated. And because people are eager to learn about it, they want to be a part of it. They understand that it's the future. But we need to be a little more inclusive, I feel, when we're approaching them, and maybe the terminology has to be a little bit different, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's going back to the question of where's like the first place to start. So one of my friends goes to importer exporter conferences, and what he's able to do is show them the rates that they can save through using stablecoins. And, they're saving millions of dollars. But along with that, it's very nascent and there aren't a lot of these or at least they don't know really how to interact with the blockchain in a safe manner, right? So where do they start? They go to, your Fireblocks, they go to your Dynamic, they need their KYC so they're not, interacting with a blacklisted wallet address, right? And so you see these millions and millions of dollars worth of savings and then not really knowing where to start. And so it's really getting the underlying infrastructure. It's then having the data to be able to, interact with the wallet addresses and everybody else in a regulated manner. And then, we deal with the financial implications of it on the back end, right? Where, okay, well, now you're moving millions and millions of dollars. You have fiat coming in, you have crypto going out, vice versa. And it becomes a very complex problem to solve really quick. And when you have the right systems in place and the right infrastructure in there, you can save yourself those millions and millions of dollars, move money almost instantaneously, and then have everything, all of the reconciliations be done for you, and it's immutable. It's on the blockchain, right? So, being able to get into it and then interact with it in the right, compliant, quick, secure way is incredibly important. And we're seeing more and more of that as, all of these companies mature, right? And so that's what I find is really interesting, is it starts with saving tens of millions of dollars. And then there's all these little, things that banks usually do that really aren't there yet. right? And then, you can't just take millions of transactions from the blockchain and just pump them into QuickBooks, right? Or, you don't have the bank doing the KYC for you, right? So I find that all of these little problems that are arising are pretty quickly and easily solved by a lot of people up here. And I always find those little use cases really interesting. That's good.
Okay, cool. And actually, I think and those are great points. Bree, you brought up something really interesting, which is just generally like accessibility, right? Like, how do we make this more accessible to like the normal kind of population, get wider adoption? What are some just like specific best practices that you guys have seen in terms of making that a reality?
Is it me?
Yeah.
Do you want me to go?
You can go.
What I see a lot, we work really closely with Fireblocks, right? And what I see a lot is, solving the problem first, and then really kind of dealing with some of the implications in the back end, right? And so, when you're saying like what should these companies really be aware of is really think about the whole workflow, how everything works. And, like Fireblocks is going to be in Dynamic and everybody else are going to be able to enable these like complex workflows for you to be able to solve. And I kind of deal with all of the CFO's problems, right? Like a year later, of, oh my God, how does the blockchain work? Do I need to, have connectivity into an archive node? I'm on Block Explorers, and it's such a, different experience than kind of where they had originally started, right? And then kind of what got you into that problem is, okay, I want to move money quickly. I have problems to solve, right? So that's what I would really think about is back to your point. It's, what are really like whiteboard the challenges that you're going to interact with, and, talk with all of your different vendors and say, hey, what problems do your customers normally experience? Or, okay, accounting is one of them. KYC, AML is another one of them, right? Like having safe custody is a big one. I mean, we've seen many hacks on different systems. And so kind of just being ahead of that and aware of it, and being able to interact with stablecoins effectively is going to be really important. Do any of you guys want to go?
Sorry, I'll go. So those are great points. I think another thing is that when it comes to making it more accessible, as you mentioned, I think one thing is when we're talking to people, and I think we're often trying to sell the technology as opposed to trying to just solve the problem. And then there can be a huge disconnect. So I think usually, it depends on who you're talking to and what part of the company, what department they're a part of, right? So if I'm talking to, for example, the CEO of the company, and they acknowledge that there's an issue that they're trying to solve for, and they're trying to do something to fix that, can I fix that problem for them? And then once I get into the nitty-gritty things of, talking to the tech team and talking to their product side, then we can start talking about, like what goes on the back end and how do we implement that, instead of just like overcomplicating things from the beginning. Because if you really think about it, if you're a business owner and you go to the bank to open a bank account, you don't really ask, how does my money move through ACH? Like nobody asks that. Most people don't even know how money moves in the US. And so I think we're overcomplicating it sometimes by not just asking, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Oh, you want to move money fast? You want to make it cheap? Cool, I can do that. We can talk about how that works later. But I feel like it's just keeping it simple.
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about actually being able to build and ship. For as much as I do appreciate maybe a long sales cycle of understanding all the nitty-gritty things that might go wrong, as a builder, as someone who's now trying to get into a market, understand whether this use case is real, I want to be able to build. I want to be able to ship. I want to be able to jump into DevX and have it just work. I don't actually want to spend all my time whiteboarding out the 50 different cases while I understand the value in it for sure. I actually index that a lot of these things need to be built to really prove out the value in your business, prove out the value to your customers, while also making sure you're building on a flexible product that could enable for KYC, AML, handling accounting verification, handling those things. For sure, that's a part of the equation. However, we really focus on, okay, users want to be able to log in, get an account, get USDC, or get something in their wallet. let's make that a reality. And developers want that experience to just work. So that's really where I think most people should really start. Understand your problem, find something that works, and start building.
I'll echo everything everyone just said. The one thing I would maybe just add is if I'm like a large enterprise or legacy business, you got to think it takes at least 12 to 18 months, if we're being generous, to actually onboard to this new tech. By the time you do your RFP, select a vendor, go through due diligence, start the integration, do testing, this space is going to look so different in probably 6 months, let alone 24 months. And so whatever use cases you see today, you want to make sure you're building on a platform that's flexible and that could support those future use cases, because by the time you actually go to market, your use case could change 5 different times. And we've seen that time and time again. So agree with everything everyone said, but I think just starting and doing something and realizing that stablecoins are not going to cure cancer today, but the way and how maybe outside of AI, this is the most dynamic space that is changing so fast. But
Anything you want to add there, Deepankar? Or I want to change it to compliance, but
Yeah, let's change. It's just funny because we still call ourselves a startup. We are a company which love to fail fast. We love to go into market soon. But compliance is like it's like a broccoli of fintech. It's good for you, but no one wants to talk about it. No one is excited about it either. But here's the thing, right? So I love. It's the thing is you start building something, you make sure everything is doing right, and your use case would change 6 times before you get to the market. That's just how startups work, and it should be this way. It's just some things to keep in mind, and maybe the back of your mind, especially as a founder, especially as a team, is you build an amazing product, which is buying, selling stablecoins, holding it, and you get it out. It's borderless, it's dynamic, it's amazing. And then your compliance person, and I hope you have a compliance person, comes to you and it's like, yeah, we saw some of the wallets being associated to a sanctioned individual or sanctioned entity. Some of your transactions are being used for some transactions on darknet, or some of the wallets owners do not actually exist. These are synthetic identities which are just there as money muling, because people find creative ways to get around a lot of the checks everyone put in. Trust me, I see this every day. The ways people do to get through the money, to get the money moving is impressive, to be honest. So yes, and the main thing is like, did you build a bad product? No, you built an amazing product. You just miss to keep in mind that money without identity is an untrusted money. It's like the identity has to be the layer of trust that sits, which helps you to make sure that everything you're building is you're not exposing yourself to fraud. Mm-hmm. 2, you're not exposing yourself to regulatory risk, because as a wallet provider, as money movement, everyone comes under the FinCEN, the Bank Secrecy Act. So you have to, as you transfer money, you have to keep AML monitoring checks. You have to keep, you need to know, in simple language, you need to know who is the person operating behind a wallet, or someone who is actually doing the money transfer. It's just as simple as that. And as I said, compliance is a thorn for everyone. It has to be there, but just not an exciting topic.
I have a follow-up question to that, because I know earlier we were just kind of chatting, and you've been at Socure for I think like 7+ years now, which is really impressive. Do you have any just like best practices for how companies should just stay on top of like regulations that are constantly evolving, especially within this space?
That's a tough thing, right? And that's why a lot of the companies like Socure exist, to make sure that you're compliant with a lot of the AML practices, you're compliant with a lot of evolving fraud. It's not just about regulations anymore. It's about, with AI, again, this, as you said, this is the most second worst thing right now. It's the types of fraud that you see is so evolving fast with AI that you have to protect your businesses against all that's happening. So it's two-course meal. One is, of course, your regulation, your compliances, and second is also preventing fraud. And I know we're short of time, so I'm just going to leave for other people as well.
I wanna add on to that. I've seen companies spend millions of dollars on consulting, like insane amounts, and they have two different guidances from the same. Two different companies have two different guidances from the same consulting firm. It's really hard to stay on top of. And to Jared's point, like where we are now is going to be completely different than 12 months, right? Like if you want to whiteboard out your workflows, like take a day. Don't take 12 months, 18 months. And to kind of go on what Adam says, don't let it stop you from going to market. Certainly not. Like build your product and then, deal with a lot of these problems on, but like talk, ask around. You can ask, you can ask your dynamic, you can ask, your Fireblocks, you can ask, around. And even if you do spend a ton of money on consulting, guess what? It's going to change in 6 months. It's going to change in 12 months. So to your point, really focus on building, solving a use case, and just as long as your problems aren't so big where you get hacked, so I would say, really spend that time initially on the security aspect of it. And then, when it comes time for that, reconciliation, accounting, I want to manage my treasury, that stuff will kind of, evolve. Right. And, so to your point, it's changing so quickly that it's nearly impossible to keep up with, which is a good thing, which is why we're all here. It's an interesting space.
Yep. Yeah, and I know we're running out of time, but really the last question, I think we're kind of covering it now, is just, as you think about the rest of this year, what are some predictions that you guys have, and what are some advice that you have for builders, as it relates to where the future is going here? And maybe we can start off with Brie over here.
Oh, can I go last?
Or we can start off with whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, so what are we seeing? We're seeing, while there is a base case, which is you should be able to facilitate a way that an end user or a customer or a business can move that money to a bank account. Makes sense. They want to land it in a bank account. But actually what we're starting to see, and I believe Trace talked about it before, is that more and more people are going to want to actually hold that and do more things with it. So whether it lands into an account that you'd be able to build other revenue streams around or other products around, that's really where we're seeing things go. You should be able to enable through companies like Borderless to be able to make sure it lands in a bank account in a local currency, what they want, but you should be able to now think about the other ways that it can jump off of. And that's really what we are starting to see. So not just thinking about what is known as the stablecoin sandwich, this idea that it starts in fiat and ends in fiat, but what are ways that it can start in fiat, land in crypto, or land in dollars, digital dollars, and have optionality from there. Where can it go? How can you build a revenue stream, other products around it? Because over time, that's really where users are going to want it. While in LATAM, they may want to put some of this money into a yield product because they don't actually want to cash out. They may want to issue a card from it. They may want to build other sort of opportunity areas. And that's really where we see the sort of the stack and the entire space evolving.
You're hard to go after. You hit a lot of my points, but I think the big thing that we're going to start seeing this year is if you just think fundamentally, what is a blockchain? It's an asset ledger. You have your Bitcoin, your ETH, now you have your dollars. You're starting to see BlackRock and the large asset managers issue tokenized debt, money market funds. How do all those things come together so that you can replicate what a Wise has done with notional pooling and all these really sophisticated things? And I think the short answer is it breaks down a lot of the barriers to entry. And that's why you're seeing Bridge and all of these new entrants enter the market. And I just think it's going to be more competition for the incumbents. And if you look at, I started at Currency Cloud and I would sit next to our head of operations and watch him log into our Barclays account. And I was shocked because it looked like it was from the 1970s. And I was what kind of company did I join? But then I realized what fintechs do at a basic level is just abstract away the complexities of the mess under the hood. And if you're taking that away and adding all these efficiencies, where I just think it's interesting. And I'll stop rambling, but whoever wants to go next.
I'll just make it quick. I just want to say I think it has a great potential. I think it's growing really great and fast. And the best part is there is enough infrastructure and companies available who can actually support that infrastructure for companies to build on top of it and get to market much, much faster. So I think it's an exciting time to be in the space of building on top of stablecoins. So and also the world is shrinking. So you need to get faster payments. You need to get yeah.
Yeah, so I think the prediction is kind of two, right? Blockchain allows you to have the optionality, I think is a really good point, to interact with a different financial system outside of the one that's already built, right? And the second, which has already been brought up, is abstraction. I don't want to know what's going on under the hood. I just want it to work, right? So, from what I've seen from our users is, hey, I just want to plug in my wallet addresses, connect to some exchanges, and okay, all of my finance is already done, right? Easy as that. Like, I want to just move funds from point A to point B. Like, for us, actual consumers, I just want to be able to do things quicker, faster, for less money, and not have to pay wire fees or something else, right? So I think that this abstraction and, my grandma doesn't really care how a wire works or how the banks physically hold her funds, right? She just cares that it works and that she doesn't really have to think about it. And so I think that, those two things are really important, right? Like, you want that, separate optionality financial system in case you live in a country where, you're not as, you don't believe in the economic policies of it, right? Having that optionality to have your funds somewhere else, right? It's kind of the, Bitcoin in a nutshell, right? And then at the same time, it's, I want to be able to send my friend money like I do on Venmo, right? But, maybe I can earn yield off of it now, right? So I think those are some of the interesting use cases, and that's kind of, I see them as kind of parallel, but a little bit different.
Keep it quick. So not so much a prediction, just thoughts. I think what we're all building together. There's a lot of us up here, and there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to work together, so that we can make this more accessible to everyone globally. But I think that's ultimately what we're building. It's that we're actually building global payments, and we're giving people the ability, hopefully soon, to have financial stability and financial freedom, to have access to be able to, as they were mentioning earlier, being able to, it's not just about the stablecoin sandwich, is about actually being able to have, control of their funds, and regardless of what volatility they have in their local currency, they can make the most out of it. So I think that's ultimately a goal as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're at time. Thank you to the panelists, and I think we'll move on to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.